Juggalos in recovery. Juggalos in recovery, man.
I'll go ahead and start my whole shits here in just 1 minute. If you're late, you're fired. So keep that in mind. Don't be fired. I've had to fire Emily like a lot. She's been fired.
It's always Emily's fault.
Always.
Sometimes it's my fault.
Yeah, if it's not Emily's fault, it's definitely your fault.
I wholeheartedly agree.
All right, I will get going. My name is Nate. Been with Juggalos in Recovery since 2021, 2022. I have 6 years of sobriety under my belt. My second time around into sobriety. Got 6 years, and I'll go ahead and I didn't realize, even though I scheduled all this shit, that I was supposed to fill 2 hours. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to fill 2 hours. I don't know what I was thinking, but so I'll start with me and my story and where I came from. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. That's where most of my family is. I grew up in Colorado though. And at the age of 9, I had my first drunk, and I knew that was how I wanted to feel for the rest of my life. I had some neighbors who were Spanish they drank and they had parties, and I was always over there at that age, just hanging out, and they gave me my first beer, and I remember drinking that beer and then immediately wanting another beer. So I went over to the cooler, grabbed 2 beers, and went onto the side of the house and chugged one of them as fast as I could. So now I'm like 2 beers deep. At 9 years old, that'll get you drunk. And I was, I remember just being really drunk. So I took the other beer and I went back home, and I'm laying in my bunk bed, with my He-Man and everything staring at me. And I opened up the beer like kind of upside down, and it went like all over me. And I was like really angry. I got angry drunk at 9. And I went outside and I threw the beer over the fence, and I guess I ended up puking in the bathtub, and I passed out, and my parents found me and they put me back in bed. And what was really weird, and this kind of is something that happened throughout my life. My parents were, my dad was very abusive. I'd get my ass beat for literally anything that came across. But when stuff like this happened, like the big stuff, they never did anything. They didn't get mad. They didn't even talk to me. They just kind of like, it didn't happen. It was one of those things that just, for whatever reason. My dad was, abusive. He would backhand you, punch you, whatever he could when he was mad and this and that. But he has this giant paddle that he kept on the wall just for me, because I wasn't a very good kid. I was lashing out and doing all this stuff. But it was 2 feet long, about 1 inch thick, and it had a bunch of holes in it. And the paddle with holes in it is just meant for maximum pain, right? Whenever I'd come home from school, friends, whatever, it would be like laying on the table. I knew I was in trouble and I was going to get, my ass beat. But if it was hanging up on the little mantle thing that he had, I was good to go. But like, it was hanging in the living room for everybody to see, like 24/7. It was just hanging there as like a warning. Anyway, I was always throwing rocks off bridges, breaking windows, anything I could to get attention. I was a bad kid to get attention is how I kind of label it. My parents weren't paying attention to me 99% of the time, so I was going to get attention somehow. And that's how I did it. Obviously not the best way to go about getting attention. My dad would lay on the couch with the paddle hanging like almost above him, just watching Hitler documentaries and talking about how he hates, Mexicans and N-words and hated gays and all my friends. And two of my best friends. His last name was Aguilar, and the other one, his first name was Pedro. I mean, you know, so, and it was the neighborhood we lived in, in Colorado. It wasn't a bad neighborhood, but it wasn't the best. But he would make me do dishes and do all these chores and be home at certain times. And if I didn't, I'd get my ass beat. And, there was a point in my life where I just stopped doing those things because I think either way, I was just going to get my ass kicked anyway. So why not just not do anything? From the age of I would say 9 to 11, I was pretty suicidal. I had suicidal thoughts. I practiced self-cutting. I would cut my face and arms with a big razor. My face was so cut up. I had all of these just huge cuts on my face. I'm lucky I don't have scars, but my parents never said or did anything. It was another one of those weird, they just brushed under the table for whatever reason. During this time, I tried to join the local gang, if that's what you want to call it. The leader didn't want to jump me in. He threw my big razor into the lake and told me to go fuck myself. And, I really looked up to that guy. So at that point, I was so ashamed of cutting myself. That's where I stopped. Even though I still wanted to, and I was still suicidal. It was just this guy, as bad of a dude as he was, when he saw certain things, and I'll get into something that he saw later on, he would take a stand against it. And I looked up to him to the point where it would change the way I would do things and whatever. So during that time, I think it was a little later when I was 11 or 12, between the 6th and 7th grade, I started huffing paint with my friends. It was one of the first times I got high off anything, other than alcohol. And it was paint, spray paint that you get from the store. Me and my friends are partially the reason why that you have to be 18 years old or whatever to buy spray paint. You have to show an ID and stuff now, because it was such an epidemic back then, especially where I lived, where that's just what kids were doing. And I still remember the way it tasted, the way it smelled. Obviously, I mean, it was paint, you just never escape it, especially when you're huffing it. We would spray it into a soda can to make it look like, we were just drinking soda, which was stupid because we were high as shit and had paint all over our hands and lips and whatever. So no matter how careful you were, it was just everywhere. But I remember the paint to this day. It was Dutch Boy 3737 acrylic aluminum. Any other paint tasted like shit. So that's the one we did. But during that summer between 6th and 7th grade, there's very little I remember because of how high we were all the time. And we were hanging out with my friend and his brother. His brother was older. He was a few grades higher than us. Anyway, he lived in the Section 8 housing, and he had 11 brothers and sisters. It was 11 total, so it was 5 and 6 or whatever. But anyway, we would just do whatever, and his parents didn't care. His mom and the stepdad or whatever didn't give a shit and just let us do whatever we wanted. We would go and back then we'd take food stamps, and you would get food stamps in paper form, not like nowadays where you have the food stamp card. But anyway, you would take the stamps in and you would buy 10-cent candy, and then they would give you 90 cents in real money, so we'd go to several stores and we'd do this until we got enough money to buy alcohol or whatever. So we would do that, and then the mom would go buy herself alcohol, and she would buy all of us alcohol as well. So we were getting super plastered. And again, this was between 6th and 7th grade. So it was wild times during that. And my parents, like I said, they turned a blind eye to a lot of this stuff. And if I was away from the house and I wasn't causing them any trouble, they didn't care where I was. I would tell them I was staying at my friend's house. My friend would say they were staying at my house, and we would just go to this guy's house and we fucking just, it was game on. There was no stopping us. We would steal his mom's car. She would get drunk and chase us around the house with her sex toys and stuff. I mean, it was really crazy growing up in that environment. it all came to a head that summer, right before 7th grade. We were at my friend's apartment complex where you're really not supposed to be in the pool area, where you're really not supposed to be if you don't have somebody there who lives there and things like that. And um, I just remember like jumping into the pool fully clothed, with my can of paint in hand and like floating to the bottom and staring up just at the sky above the water. And then I heard like a bunch of yelling. And I'm like, oh shit, that kind of like woke me up because I think I probably would have drowned, honestly, because I just was like down there. I was high. Like the high you get from paint is indescribable. But I swam to the top. There was all these people yelling and, throwing us out and pissed off or whatever. So I took off. I went home. I wasn't trying to get in trouble again. I mean, at this point I had so many run-ins with the police. I wasn't about to have another one. So I ran home and I wanted to get high again, and I'm like 12 or however old you are going into 7th grade. I think it's 11 or 12. And I just really wanted to get high again. This was like maybe an hour later. So I went down to my friend's house where we do all the partying, and there's all these cops outside, lines of cops. My friend's getting arrested. And I walk right up to the cop and I'm like, hey, what's going on? What's happening? This is my friend's house. He grabs me by the face and he's like, you were one of the kids down there, huffing paint or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's like, yes, you are. I could see it all over your face. Cause I mean, it's all over your fucking face. It's all over your hands. Like you can't hide it. It's what it is. So they arrest me. They arrest my friend. They arrest everybody that's involved. They drive over to this other kid's house. He just happened to be hanging out with us. And now he's crying in the yard. And I'm in the back of the car and I'm laughing because I'm still kind of high. And my parents, like, they're just going to be mad anyway. So, like, what does it matter? So I get taken down to, they didn't take us to the jail, but they took us to, like, the hospital because, we're all fucking high on pain. They wanted to make sure we're okay. Call my parents. My mom comes and gets me. And again, nothing. There was no reaction, like, whatsoever from my parents. And it all come to light that we were going into the store like 7-Eleven and Kmart, and we're riding out on bikes, stuffing our pants full of things. So they got us on all kinds of shoplifting, but the major charge that I got was felony abuse of a household product. Didn't even know that was a thing, but I got a felony at the age of 12, and vandalism, trespassing. There's all kinds of other stuff that come along with it. Cats in the way. So again, my parents didn't really do anything. I was required to, take drug classes and do all these classes, and my dad came with me, which is really strange, just because of the person that he was. And he was cool with it. He took me and we did the classes together, and I ended up on diversion. So they give you a diversion pass basically, and if you do certain things, it'll expunge it from your record so you don't end up being a felon at 12. And so that's what I did. I went through that. I ended up not getting the felony charge stick, which is I mean, I still look back and am so thankful. I mean, catching a felony at that age, even if it's back then, especially, being a felon ruins your life. Nowadays it's a little bit better. But anyway, I, spent that summer just getting fucked up, and then it came to an abrupt end. And now I have to go back to school. So I go to summer school. I went to summer school for 7th and 8th grade again. That's the only way I passed because I just kept ditching school. I was never part of the crowd, never wanted to be. Ended up, doing summer school to pass. And anyway, that I was in 7th grade, finally getting my shit together, actually going to class. And my parents went to the casino in Colorado, Blackhawk, and they won quite a bit of money. And they ended up moving out of the neighborhood. So I have to pick up all my shit and move. And I was like doing karate and like actually getting good grades for once in my life. And they're like, yeah, we're moving. So we moved to this like big, nice house, like in North Arvada. It was like where the like rich kids lived or whatever. And I had to leave all my friends behind, leave everything behind, and start all over again. And when I say rich neighborhood, I mean it was rich compared to where I was at, right? So it was not, you know, nothing like Hollywood Hills or some shit. It was just a better neighborhood or whatever. And so I'm in this new school and I don't know anybody and I'm just hanging out. And this kid comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to smoke some weed?" And I was like, "I don't know what are you talking about?" I really didn't even know. I mean, we went through Dare and all that shit, but I had no idea, really, really what it was. He goes, "Smell my hand," and I smell his hand and it smells like whatever, weed. So we go to his dad's house and he's like, "I'm going to steal some weed from my dad or whatever." And we get there and the dad didn't have any weed, and he's like, "Oh, well, we'll just hang out," So I made some new friends, him and this kid, Steven, and we became really good friends. And they were like, like me, their parents didn't give a shit. And, we were just trying to do whatever we were trying to do. And we started shoplifting again. We'd steal cigarettes, sell them at school. We'd shoplift from Cub Foods, and we would, just stuff cartons down our pants and walk out. Nobody really ever said anything. It was, but one day we're walking back from Cub Foods with like 3 or 4 cartons, and these dudes stop us. They're at this bridge in this park. It sounds more like scary than it is, but they're like, "Hey, you want to trade some cigarettes for some weed?" And they actually had weed, and we're like, "Hell yeah, let's do that." So we traded them some, and that's the first time I got high. Was at that bridge with this guy named Andy. I remember his name. But they got us high, and I remember it wasn't that cool. Like, I don't remember really feeling much. I was just like, "Yeah, whatever," And so anyway, we got a bag from him, and it just kind of progressed from there. We would trade people cigarettes for weed, and we started ditching the 7th grade and going and hanging out at the high school at this arcade called Penny Lane Arcade, where you could actually play video games. I don't think they have those anymore. Shows my age or whatever, but going to house parties with the high schoolers, having sex. The first time I lost my virginity was to some girl who was like 18 years old, and I'm like 12, 13 years old. I mean, we're just partying, and nobody really knows that we're like just middle schoolers. They see us at the high school all the time, and so by the time I went to high school, it was like I was already just there for like a couple of years anyway. But that's probably one of the biggest things I regret is back then anyway, was sleeping with this girl because she was known to be like whatever, and it just was a bad scene. And anyway, so we're just hanging out at the arcade, ditching school, and then I go back to my old set of friends because we're older now. People are starting to drive. I'm no longer skateboarding, things like that. We're just, growing up and able to expand more because we're able to travel. I'm not just stuck in my North Arvada pad anymore. And so I start hooking up with people that are selling, acid and all kinds of other stuff. And I hooked up with this family through a friend of mine called the Rainbow Family. And if you do any Googling on them, you'll find out pretty quick who they were. They're basically out of Michigan, did a lot of music festivals, dealing with drugs, things like that. But they sold us acid in huge sheets of it for $100. You would get like maybe 150 hits for $100. We'd get that, cut it up, sell it for $5. We'd get vials of it and put it on sugar cubes and make our own sheets and stuff like that. So now I'm doing a fuckload of acid, like more than probably anybody that I know still to this day. 5 strips at a time, things like that, right? So we're doing that. We're doing any kind of meth, coke, anything that comes through. I hooked up with this guy in high school. That was the first time I did meth, was in his Camaro. He cut us up some, and I had like a matchbook and I used the flimsy side and like flung it all over my flight jacket because I was like a punk kid. I was like dressed flight jacket was like punk, whatever, and flung it all over my jacket. And I was all embarrassed because his sister was there, and his sister was super fine. So it was just like, and the guy from NoFX calls it like a garbage can kid. There's other words for it, but that's what I would do. I'd do anything that I could get my hands on that was affordable. And the Rainbow Family thing was wild. How it came to an end is my friend did a 5-strip and then drove the wrong way down C470 and got arrested by the cops and basically turned everybody in, and they all got arrested. I never saw them again. But I never saw that friend again either. Like he went to live with his dad because he caught a bunch of charges from driving the wrong way down the highway on acid. Like, I mean, come on. So now I'm hanging out with that guy and his sister, and we're punk rock. We're getting drunk, handles of vodka. This guy's like blackout drunk, driving us around in his Camaro, partying, ditching school. Like, it was just nonstop party up until, later on in life when I actually sort of got my shit together. And I was doing so much meth at one time that I would do a line and it was like almost like I got stuck in my head, and I couldn't do anymore. And then when I would like breathe later, it would like come loose and I'd get high like just on some random day. I was just doing so much of it and it didn't really have an effect anymore. So my friends were kind of in the same position, and some of them started shooting up. I'll never forget, my friend's like, you need to go to the store and get me some needles. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're not just going to sell me like a pack of needles. What's wrong with you? And, but I went in there and they sold me a pack of like 14 gauge or whatever it was. It was the smallest one. I don't think 14's the right gauge, but anyway, I got the smallest gauge they had, and then, watched my friend shoot up his girlfriend for the first time. And that's when I decided, it's too expensive for me. And then watching this person like ruin her life was a bit much for me. And I always say this in my story that I'm just so thankful that it was as expensive as it was, because I lived in Colorado and that stuff, they imported or whatever, and from wherever they take it from. And it was just more expensive where I was at. And thank God for that, because I quit doing it. Like, I'd rather go buy a bag of weed and like a gallon of vodka and get fucked up for like a, maybe a week or a half a week or whatever, than I would want to, buy like a gram of meth or whatever and be high for like maybe a day, and it's like, thank God it was so expensive. Like, eventually I got away from those kids, and just started to get my shit together for the most part. I like I said, I went to summer school for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And then I dropped out of 9th grade, and I was just like working at a gas station, like living with my parents, not really going anywhere. I had a van, which was cool, that I could barely pay for. And I'm just maintaining and getting like high off weed and drinking still. Like, I'm just like more functional than I like ever had been, but I wasn't really going anywhere. I eventually decided that I'm going to go back to school. And that's where I met this girl. And so I went back to a high school as an alternative high school, and I went from like 8 a.m. to noon. I didn't have any homework. It was really cool though, because I was able to work towards my GED, which I got. And then I was like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong, and I'm going to get my diploma. And I did. I got my GED and my diploma. I hit towards the end of that, I was still trying to get all my friends to graduate with me. I was trying to pick them up for school and things like that. And just, I got a handful of my friends to graduate with me, which is amazing. And I still think about it to this day, that like, if I wasn't picking these people up and wasn't doing my thing. So even back then, I was trying to help people, even when I couldn't help myself. But we all did it. We did it, and we did it, you know, in the face of everybody saying that we couldn't. But after I graduated, I was trying to get my girlfriend at the time to graduate, and I was driving back from school one day, and I hit this pregnant lady with my van in her car. She went flying in her car, you know, and whatever. Thank God the baby was okay, but that ended up it was a whole really horrible thing that happened, but it ended up being really awesome because I got a bunch of money from the insurance and I was able to move out on my own. And I said, whenever I move out of my parents' house because of how abusive and shitty they were to me, I'm never going back, and I never did. As soon as I got that seed money, I got out, and I was living on my own. I took over. I have a brother, which I might be able to get to that in the time. I still got a lot of time left, but he was renting a house and he moved out. He moved to Florida, actually to Tampa. All you Florida people, he moved down to Tampa and left me his rental house, and I moved into that. And me and the girl, and she ended up dropping out. She never graduated. But we were living together. I was working at a gas station as a mechanic, you know, still partying, things like that. I want to back up a little bit because this was when I was 15, before I moved out and everything. This is when ICP joined my life. Was before that, when I was like 15. My friends were like, there's this fucking rap group, you know, they dress as clowns and, you know, we should go check them out. I'm like, yeah, that sounds really dumb. Because I was into like punk rock and metal. And I was like, nah, that doesn't sound like something I want to do or whatever. But it was the Riddle Box tour. So we went, and they had a RV outside, and, you know, the trampolines and stuff on stage. And back then they were even still letting people on stage and stuff. And it was fucking magical, right? It's probably one of the more magical experiences. It's like my second or third concert. My first concert was Ministry, which was super hard industrial, and then Pantera and things like that. But then it was ICP, and it just blew my brain, you know. And so I found kind of my family there, and my girlfriend, she was super into them, and, you know, all this stuff. And so kind of fast forward, you know, to where I move out with this girl. We decide we're going to go to the second gathering, which was in Toledo, Ohio. Me and my friend Jason, he's my friend, and he's in jail now for the next 8 years because he still hasn't gotten his life together, and he just robbed a bank. But anyway, we take the Greyhound to Toledo, and we're riding the Greyhound from Colorado all the way to Toledo, Ohio. And it's a fucking horrible ride. I don't know if you've ever ridden the Greyhound. It's an awful fucking experience. Like, they stop constantly at all the major cities, like through Chicago and everything. I don't know. It was just a fucking nightmare. I hate the Greyhound, and I hate driving. And then I'm like on a Greyhound, you know, fucking anyway. We go to Toledo. You know, we fucking have a blast at the gathering, right? My girl, at the time, she spent all of our money on fucking, not Fago Lovers. It was one of the other, like, smaller, like, websites that were out back then. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? You waste all your money on this bullshit when you could have, like, we're out of cigarettes, we're out of weed. What are you doing? You know? Anyway, we rode the bus back. Me and that chick, we're just like going head to head, and eventually she ended up cheating on me. And I've never hit anybody really. No girls, no kids. Like, I've never spanked my kids or anything. But she just starts punching me in the face one day and breaks all of our bongs and stuff. And so I threw her out the door, and that was the end of that girl. Later on, I'm at the gas station, and my wife, who's my wife now, she comes in, and she's buying a soda, and we were all like hound dogs. Like, we'd be out the window, like, waiting for girls to come in so just we can like oogle them and shit, you know. And this was like the only time like I ever spit my game at a girl out there, though. And I went out and I just said, you know, so what you got there? She's like, Pepsi Twist. And I'm like, yeah, that sucks. Pepsi Twist is fucking gross. That was like my pickup line. Like, how the hell did that work? I have no idea. So next thing you know, I'm dating her. she's coming over all the time, and she's living with me and in my rental house. You know, we've been together ever since. It's been 23 years. But the next year, Peoria, Illinois gathering happens. And so me and Jason again, and my friend Damien, we all take a plane and we head to Peoria, and we get blackout drunk like every day that we're there. I mean, it's just what it is. And I'm at a pizza place, and they had these giant drinks, like you couldn't even like drink them. And I was just like, all I remember is dropping that cup like in the middle of the floor and everybody kind of staring at us, and then we left. The next thing I remember is we're outside of a pizza place and we see like Violent J across the street with some girl like going into another restaurant. And back then, Peoria, Illinois, and anytime we went to a gathering, like they did not want us in their city. They didn't want to have anything to do with Juggalos. So you're the fucking enemy. You go into you go into a restaurant and they're like, get the fuck out, or they're just dicks and they charge you like twice whatever the drink is. And anyway, we're outside of a place called Babes, I think it was. And that's still there, but it's a strip club. And you can kind of see in the window. So we're being all creepy, like peeking in the window. And this girl comes by with this giant ball that's covered in duct tape, right? Classic ICP shit. Like, but it isn't it's not like a full ball of duct tape. It's a bouncy ball. So we're like bouncing it. The bouncer comes out. He starts talking some shit, and I'm like, you're lucky we don't put a rock through your fucking window. And then that's all I remember. He had like hit me from the side, and I busted my head open on the planter box outside of the gathering, like restaurant area. And I ended up in the hospital. I had like 17 staples put in my head. And I had the dope amulet that year that gets you into the pit, but my head's all fucked up now. So I had to like trade my friend. And anyway, so after that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on trying to like, not get high and focus on being like a good citizen, and just getting my shit together. And so I did that, soon after my wife ended up pregnant with our daughter. I got a better job. I moved from a mechanic to being like a call center representative, which was actually pretty cool. It paid really good and you can move up pretty quick there. So that's what I did. But the whole time, I quit doing all the hard drugs. I started, I quit smoking weed and I just started drinking because my new job, they would do random drug tests, and so I'd drink like on the weekends, or I'd drink here and there. And, and I would try to control my drinking, and I ended up just like depressed. I started gaining weight. I went from like 170 to 190. I remember being at the doctor being like, oh shit, 190. Like that's crazy, and, I ended up going back into like a inpatient behavioral treatment facility because of my depression. I was drinking and I was fucking depressed. I was getting fat, and I had a baby and I was scared. And so I went through this whole course of DBT and psych meds, and they put me on all kinds of Klonopin and depression medicine that I've come to realize I didn't really even need. But anyway, so I did that for a while, maintained a pretty good life, bought a house. I have a baby and I bought a house, and, just trying to maintain, and be a functional. And I think I was a functional alcoholic for a long time. I had a house, I had all this shit, and I wasn't abusive. I wasn't an abusive drunk. I was more of like a just slobber, pass out drunk, right? And we end up upgrading our house. We have our second kid, which is True. You guys will meet him at the gathering. I call him True, but his name's Trent, and named him after Trent Reznor. Named my daughter Summer Rain, so they have some pretty cool names. But we moved to this bigger house in a better part of town, because the one we were first bought was a townhome, and it was kind of on the outskirts of Denver, whatever. And so we're at this house and we're struggling to pay bills just because it's a bigger house payment, and then I decide, you know what, I'm going to quit and be a stay-at-home dad. That sounds like a great idea. That'll fix my depression, right? So I did that, and I sucked. I was a shitty stay-at-home dad, in my opinion, and I think that level of failure drove my drinking because I increased it. I started drinking during the day, started drinking in the afternoon. I'd pass out for a while my kids took care of themselves, wake up, start drinking again. I started working in a grow house. I was because that was when weed got legalized, right? So cool, I could start smoking weed again. That'll be great. So now I'm on Klonopin, I'm on all these psych meds, and now I'm drinking and smoking weed and working at a grow house, trimming weed, cutting down plants and stuff, and just kind of spiraling. It was getting worse and worse. I got fired from the grow house because I went over to maintenance and I was just super high and drunk all the time, and I fell off of the hydro tanks and hurt my back and got fired from there, and got my first cease and desist letter from a company because I was harassing them so much on social media and stuff, and anyway, I was like, well, this sucks, and went back to work at another call center. So this is for Bank of America, and at the time, Bank of America was trying to clean up the mess that they made in 2007. So in 2007, I was also trying to be a home inspector at the same time I was working at the call center, and I spent $15,000 trying to build a business, and then the economy crashed. So my business didn't go anywhere. Because I was always in construction with my dad growing up. He would make me go and work with him and stuff. And anyway, so I did that for a while, and that didn't work. But Bank of America was trying to fix all those predatory loans that they put out there. If you know anything about what happened in 2007, Bank of America and all the banks were handing out loans left and right. There's a whole movie on it. They would give you a fucked up arm loan. And that was actually what I bought my first house with, but I was able to upgrade my income to the point where even when my arm flexed higher, I was still able to afford it. And since I have a lot of time, when you get an arm loan, it can go up or down the next year depending on interest rates. So if the next year it goes up, you end up paying like $1,000, $2,000 more dollars because of your arm interest rate went up, right? So anyway. So now I'm working for Bank of America, working these horrible loans. Start like hanging out with the girls there, my wife's at home, I'm married, like, I'm hanging out with them. I'm going to the bars like after work and stuff. And then one day I just didn't come home. I had stopped at a bar, and I swear to Christ, I only had like 3 vodka drinks, right? Which wasn't a lot for me because I was drinking as much as I was. I was drinking a pint or two every couple hours, but I don't remember anything. From what I'm told by the other people that were there is I just got up, didn't pay my tab or nothing, and I fucking bounced. I went the opposite direction of where my house was. I ended up in what they call Federal Heights. Almost sideswiped a few people, whatever they called the cops. When I came to, I was like parked on the side of the road and sitting in like a field, like off the road. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I might have realized how drunk I was and pulled over and just like got out, and I was trying to call somebody. Anyway, the cops pull up, and how a DUI works, it doesn't matter if your keys are blah, 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 you get a fucking DUI. So they take me, and I didn't come home, and my wife didn't know where I was. And when I called her in the morning, hey, I got a DUI. That's when like shit started going downhill with the wife. I mean, it was always kind of rocky because of the way I treated her and the kids and how I was always fucking passed out and whatever. And, the kids raised themselves, and I feel really bad for my wife because she was like, trying to hold the wheels on the bus while I was out getting fucked up and trying to figure myself out. Like I'm still like blaming my parents for my abuse. I'm still drinking. It's like this horrible cycle, and so anyway, they take my license. I don't have a license anymore, but I still fucking drive because I'm like, you know what? I'm not alcoholic. That was just an accident. Like, you know, everybody gets a DUI, right? Like, anyway, she takes me to an AA meeting, and I pull in, or she pulls up and drops me off. And I'm sitting in there, and like the first 10 minutes, they're going on about God, this and that. They have pamphlets like literally to a church. And I've never seen this since in AA room. So this is really a strange situation, I think. They're handing me a thing and saying, come to my church, come to my church. It was more of like a recruitment like center, in my opinion. Next thing I know, they're fighting. Like some two dudes are like fist fighting over whoever the fuck, whatever was going on. And I'm crying because I'm like just fucking like in there because my wife just dropped me off, you know. And so I got up and I left, and I didn't go back. I started drinking again, bouncing back from job to job because I quit the Bank of America job. I can't remember if I quit or they laid us off because it was just such a horrible job anyway. But I'm working at Home Depot. I'm working at UPS. I'm working at Lowe's, you know, barely making ends meet, riding my fucking bike in the middle of the night, you know, just life sucked, you know. I ended up going, like, I got 6 months probation for the DUI. I got a bunch of other stuff and a breathalyzer for like 6 months in my car. And so all of that comes to an end. I get off of probation, and me and the wife are like, you know what, we're going to move to Seattle because we went and visited there, or we've taken trips, and we're like, okay, that's a place we've always wanted to go. Let's move. I'm like, yeah, let's move. All my problems are going to leave me. You know, I'm going to leave my parents behind. All my problems, fuck it. Let's leave them in Colorado and go to Seattle. So we moved to the Seattle area. I'm here for 2 weeks, doing pretty good. I'm not drinking. You know, I'm still heavily overweight. I'm still taking like 5 Klonopin like at a time. You know, just all this fucking shit. And like one day I go in the closet and our closet's soaking wet. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? You know? And like we had problems with our old house and just all these. And it turns out the guy installed the shower wrong, and there's black mold, and we have to move out of the house because they have to, like, our house basically is like a fucking, you know, a bomb exploded and they had to rip like the center of it out. And it's going to cost $35,000 and, you know, all this shit. And then so that's why I just lost it again. Like, again, you know, we do this where we drink when we're happy, we drink when we're sad, we drink, you know, whatever. And this just set me over the edge. I was super depressed, super sad. So I started drinking again, like heavily. We're living in a hotel. We finally get to move back in. The house is still kind of ripped apart. Easter Sunday comes around, which is on April Fool's Day that year. So 4/1 of 2018. I get blackout drunk. We go to the movies. I go off on my entire family and her in-laws and everybody who's there. And I leave in my car and I get another DUI. And this was within 6 months of me getting off probation on my other DUI. I'm, 3,000 miles away from my mom and my life where it was. And I'm in jail again. And I'm calling the wife and I'm threatening suicide again. You know, and she was just like, okay, go ahead and do that. You know, go ahead and kill yourself. She didn't say that, but she did what she had to do to get through to me. Like, she had to pick up, she left me with she left, you know, she took the cage, she took the dog, she took everything and she left. And that's what she had to do. Because I couldn't be lived with anymore. I wasn't a fit husband. I wasn't even like a functional person anymore, you know, and it was just another time in my life, probably the worst time, where I just felt like the lowest human I could probably be. My kids are gone. My son's 9. My daughter's like 12-ish. And they go and live with grandma, and I'm sitting in jail. And then when I get out, like, okay, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to fix my life. Like, I have to. I got to turn this around. I've got diabetes. I'm 240 pounds, hooked on all the fucking meds, you know. So I get my phone charged. I start looking up AA meetings in the area. And the next one really wasn't until the next morning, and I had some shit I had to deal with anyway. So the next morning, 7 a.m., I get back in my truck. They had left my weed and my alcohol and everything just in the passenger seat, just fucking sitting there. Like, and I'm like, okay, I have a choice here. What do I do? I could throw all this shit away. I can go use one more time, right? Like just that one more time, I'm gonna get fucked up one more time. But I throw it all away. I threw all of it away. And the next morning I went to an AA meeting and I just sat there. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I had no idea what they were talking about steps and all this fucking work I have to do. And I'm just like, fuck, man, my whole life is going to be this. Like, it was just super defeating, right? But the next day I went back 7 a.m. The next day I went back 7 a.m. Just kept going back 7 a.m., 7 a.m. And eventually I opened up and I started crying, just crying my eyes out. And some guy's like, hey, looks like you need a sponsor. And he started sponsoring me. And I checked myself into another, outpatient therapy place. And I started doing that. And I remember crying all over the lady, and it's a small town I'm in. So I fucking see that lady all the time now. I'll go to the grocery store and there she fucking is, the lady I like cried my eyes out. She's really cool though. Anyway, it finally was like, at first I was doing it for my family. I was like, I'm gonna get my family back, That's why I'm doing this. I'm gonna get my family back. I think it's gonna be amazing. And then as I'm going through, the wife's like, I'm not coming back until you've got like a year or so of sobriety, at least something, you can have visitation with the kids, stuff like that. And so I spent a lot of time alone, just getting used to the quiet, getting used to myself, reading the book, going to meetings, meeting with my sponsor, writing out definitions from the book. He had me go through like a really long way, which I didn't necessarily like, but it was what I needed at the time. And I finally got it, and my family came back, and we had our first date. And, we still have our beautiful house. We still have our children. We're able to correct these wrongs basically, and do some damage control with our kids. Because fortunately I didn't damage them. I hopefully didn't damage them as much as I think I did and as much as I could have. But it finally clicked, and then I'm finally sober. And I go, okay, my son's like, he's got his brains online now. And he's like, hey, Dad, you know who ICP is? I'm like, yeah, dude, don't you see the fucking posters and all this shit? Like, this is like, he's like, oh my God, that's them. And I'm like, yeah, And then he's like, have you heard of The Gathering? And I'm like, yeah, bro, you don't even know. He's like, we should go. What the fuck you talking about? Like, that's a really bad idea. Like, I'm not going back there. I got beat up as the last one. Like, a fucking no. And then I'm online and I see Juggalos in Recovery and how they're going to have a tent there and shit. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, what is this? Like, this is amazing. What's happening right now, So I hit up Frank and, whatever. And then I, me and the kid, we go. I'm fucking terrified. I'm terrified. So I rent the car. We get there. I hit the grounds and they're right out front. Like Frank and them are all out front in their tent. That's the first place I stopped. And that year I didn't stay a lot. Like I didn't stay in the tent because I felt really out of place. Like I never feel comfortable. Like I don't ever feel like I'm in like part of anything, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'm in and out of the tent, but that was the first stop I made. And, at the end of the gathering, Frank gives me the coin that says I survived the gathering, sober, whatever it said. And, that shit made me cry. Like makes me want to cry right now. Like I did it. Like I went the whole gathering. I brought my kid with me. I did like, I don't know. It was the feeling is amazing when you're able to do something like that was so traumatic. And then you're able to go through and do it again and do it better and make it better than you left it and help people along the way. Like, I don't know. For me, it was fucking magical. So I'm back the next year and now I'm doing the social media for Juggalos in Recovery. I still do my AA meetings. I'm helping my community. I'm building these bridges with my kids and my family that I never thought I would. And, life's pretty good, and the part they don't tell you is that life still keeps coming at you. Even when you're sober, you still have these magical points in your life where everything's like just amazing, but there are bad times that you still have to get through, in sobriety. So although those bad things still come along, I am able to handle them in a way that I've never been able to handle them before. And it's thanks to this group, and it's thanks to, the steps and to sobriety and all of that, because, I don't think I would be here otherwise. So that's all I got. I'll open it up to sharing, but I do have, because I have like another like almost hour to fill. I have like an exercise we're going to go through. But I'll open it up. Whoever wants to share, either raise your hand or just start sharing.
Nate, that was amazing.
Thank you,
I
brother.
don't think I've ever heard your full story before. I'm sure that's just the general overview. We all have more to us than we can tell in 1 hour.
Right.
You've come a long way, and I'm glad that you were able to find us. Now, this next question is coming from the president of Juggalos Recovery, not Frank, because you said something that triggered a, hey, we need to fix something. So I need to make sure that it's what it is. So you said when you were in our tent, the first time you were in our tent, when we were in the parking lot, you said you didn't feel like you belonged. Was that something on our side or something on your side?
Oh no,
Or a little bit of both?
100% me. You
Okay.
guys were welcoming as shit. Like, I don't know. Like, I've just never felt like included, and I didn't want to like interrupt anything you guys were doing,
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it was totally me. Like,
Okay.
just how I am.
Yeah, I was just making sure, because that's one of the things that I strive for us to do, is to make sure people feel welcomed and a part of it, no matter how long they're in that tent
Oh yeah, no,
or in the
absolutely.
group.
Yep.
But I do want to thank you for all of the work and dedication and passion you put into Juggalos and Recovery, because Chris, D, and I were talking, and where we're at right now from last year, we wouldn't have been able to make it this far without you. To the point to where, and I'm going to drop this on you right now, so buckle up. We want you to become part of the upper management team of Juggalos in Recovery. So it'll be you, me, Chris, and D.
Hell yeah.
We have bigger plans in store, which we'll go over at the next board meeting, but it'll be us four who are the main four, the four horsemen of Juggalos in Recovery, basically.
Okay, that's awesome.
So we would, if you're willing, we would much appreciate your help in that, because you have been, you have proven your worth. You've proven how great of a person you are, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do without you.
Hell yeah. I will 100% accept that. That's amazing. Thank you. I'm just so happy to be a part of this group. Like, it's literally a passion of mine, and I don't know, just amazing.
It shows, and thank you for being a part of it. It does mean a lot to all of us.
Scarecrow, looks like you got your hand up. Fire away, buddy.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your story, first of all. Missed a whole bunch of it. I totally forgot it was Saturday till just a few minutes ago. But I caught the part you said when they gave you back your car and it had all the weed and all the alcohol in it. When I got out of jail, they caught me with less than a quarter gram of meth. It was in a little straw, and it was 0.23 grams was the actual charge, so less than a quarter gram. But I had all of my stuff, like my kit with all my pipes and a couple bags of dope, inside a box that was inside my dirty clothes bag. When I get out of jail, they give me back all my stuff. I look in that dirty clothes bag. They didn't even find the box. I still got 3 grams of dope in there, a couple pipes. I got paranoid, thought they were trying to catch me up. I went to the park. I was going to give it away, but you know how we do. Instead, I just started sharing it and then doing it myself again. And When they first gave that to me, I'm like, these motherfuckers are trying to catch me up. I got all paranoid, thought they were watching me. It was some kind of test or something. But I was homeless. So they just don't rustle. There was a bag of homeless person's dirty fucking clothes. They just didn't fuck with that shit. I want to go digging through there. But yeah, I had a similar experience where they gave me back all of my drugs.
It was weird. It was fucking weird. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you could arrest me on drunk driving and then give me my car back with everything that I had in there that I was using the night of. Like, okay.
That's some kind of entrapment.
Right. But like I said, it was a choice that like I had at that point. It was like a turning point for me. And it was like, do I have one last go? And if I probably did all that shit that night, you know, I probably wouldn't have stopped again. You know what I mean? It was yeah, but that was weird. Like, what the fuck?
Well, thanks again for your share. I appreciate it. I wish I would have caught the whole thing, but like I just barely realized it was Saturday. Totally forgot about this meeting.
You're all
But I'm here
good,
now.
brother. Thank you for being here. You know, I appreciate it.
I love you. Whoop, whoop.
Love you too. Yeah. Woo woo. Anybody else?
Hey!
What up, Concrete?
Thank you. Brought a couple tears listening to that story. And I finally got the scratch ticket in the process to keep me kind of that I got on my birthday to keep me occupied so I didn't get all OCD. Like, I got to do stuff. But beautiful story. And it's nice to know I wasn't the only one terrified my first sober gathering, or to be reminded like it sounded just like me. I was scared to go, and I couldn't get more than, you know, I couldn't get any other days off, so I literally only went for one day, and I figured it was for the best because I might get loaded if I hang out there too long or whatever. And I'm just walking around and I see the Sober Balls banner, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I walk in here like, what the fuck, really? Started asking questions. There's a really small tent. They were just, and then, you know, it was by the main stage, and they're just hanging out there. Frank wasn't there that year. And, yeah, Chris was very helpful. I don't think I made it to a single meeting, though. Like, they had 2 meetings out of the day, and, yeah, it's just like, every time I walked in there, I was like, oh, I want to go to a meeting, and it's like, yeah, I had to wait till later, and I don't know, regardless, it was cool. I could walk in there and talk to somebody, tell them how I was feeling, so it didn't really matter whether I attended a meeting or not. Or just brag about how I can't believe that I'm like saying no to all these people that are offering me fucking alcohol and drugs, and they understood. And yeah, I connected with a lot of that story.
Thanks, Concrete. I appreciate it. Funny story. At that point, I was like, you know, 300-400 or whatever meetings deep in like AA, and like I tried some NA and stuff. And this was the first meeting where a chick was like telling her story like naked, you know, at the gathering. And you know, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep coming back. This is fucking lit. But no, it was it was definitely an experience that I'll never forget. And I, you know, like we tell Frank this all the time and shit. Like, I don't know if I would have ever went back. You know, I never got away from ICP and all of that. Like, you know, I was still like going to shows when they came and things like that. But I don't think I'd ever got back like fully into the family and into the gathering if it wasn't for Juggalos and Recovery. I mean, like dead serious, you know.
And we go there thinking we're alone, and it's like, holy shit! Like, I mean,
Right.
you know,
Comes
you're
out.
not alone. You've embedded in your head that you're not alone, but then like to go to the gathering, I mean, that's just what it was like. I thought that's what everybody did. Everybody went there and got fucked up. I mean, who knows how many sober people were there at my first gathering in 07 that I didn't know about. Like, fucking, yeah. And I was used to the Dave Bridge experience. That was my last fucking gathering, was when there was a drug use, so.
Well, there's that, and back in when I was going, like these places didn't want us there. Juggalos were looked down upon. Like, I mean, we still are, but not as, I mean, we're more accepted nowadays than we ever have been, which blew me away too, going to the gathering again. I was like, wow, like these people actually want us here at this place. Like, I don't know, man. So definitely refreshing. But thank you, Concrete. You're the shit, man. And I wish I lived closer to you in the Seattle area because I'd spend more time with you, brother. I really would.
Same, brother. Same.
Oh, well, go for it.
I need to move up north. It's expensive up here.
So, Nate, you have become one of my closest friends since joining Juggalos in Recovery. And I think that's like one of the greatest gifts as far as joining any recovery community is the relationships you bond, because any successful community, regardless of what the goal is, it's all built on relationships. Humans need relationships, even though they might not necessarily want them. That's how humans in general, that's how they thrive. You know what I mean? And I just have to say, if it wasn't for Juggalos in Recovery, I wouldn't have met you. Like, we have became extremely close. And I identify a lot with your story. It just reminds me, like, we weren't given the tools to be successful. Our parents, unfortunately, they failed us. And I keep saying, I always tell myself, that they did their best with the tools that they had, because at the end of the day, we're not victims. We have to take responsibility for our lives today. We are grown ass adults, and we have to take responsibility for our recovery, because that victim mentality will keep us sick, and we can't live that anymore, live there anymore. So it's just those days of running and gunning and pointing the finger at who hurt us, what they did to us, doesn't matter anymore. And I love that you pointed that out. I can no longer blame my parents for the bullshit that happened to me, because guess what? That happened how long ago? And so I love that you did point that out. You take responsibility for your shit today, and you've helped me a lot. It's crazy that, like, someone that I have not even met in person has helped me more than the people that are around me, because it's just that willingness to become open and vulnerable. And that key connection is that, we're fucking Juggalo family. Like, that's fucking huge. And like, I'm super grateful for Juggalos in Recovery, because I was able to form that connection and that bond. So yeah, I loved your story. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for that vulnerability. It was great. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Noel. That means a lot to me. It really does. To form these bonds with you guys, and you has been awesome. And thank you. That's all I can say without crying like a baby. So thank you.
Of course. I mean, crying is like, we were growing up, like, if you cried, you were a fucking pussy. So, of course, like, our first
Right.
response is like, shut up, pussy, stop fucking crying. But that's how we heal today. That's how we recover today. It's just like, if you don't cry, you hold it in, and then it comes out either sideways out the fucking neck, or you act out in another way that you're not proud of. And it's just like, that's a good thing that you are able to admit that you cry today. I have to teach my son that, because that alpha male or macho, whatever the case may be, it's like, it's a good thing that you cry. That shows strength. So that's good that you admitted that. Props on that.
Thanks, Noel. You're awesome.
You too. Everybody here is awesome. We're clean. It's what, 5:00 on a Saturday. What else could we be doing? I'm proud of
Right.
everybody here.
All right. Anybody else want to share before I move into the next little segment here?
Yes, it's looking like 6 o'clock tonight. I'm gonna reach my 300 days, 10 months.
Oh, hell yeah.
Slowly picking it
Congratulations.
all back up.
Hell yeah. And then you got your brother Ernie up in this bitch too, man. You're helping people all around you, brother. Like, you're a big part of our meetings, man. And I hope you know that. So congratulations. That's amazing. Amazing.
Sure, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop, whoop, Ernie. Fucking glad you're here too, brother. Hell yeah. All right, so unless anybody else has anything, I'll move on. I do want to show you guys these things, so I'm going to bring them to the gathering. They're like things you wear on your head, and so I have like a bunch of them that I'm doing right now, but the one I'm going to be super proud of when it's done is the Sober Balls one. I don't know if you guys can see that. This is his nutsack so far. You wear them on your head, like walking around. It's going to be fucking awesome. I don't care what anybody says. That's part of
Nate, no, I'm not wearing that. No, I'm not wearing that.
I'll wear it for you. It's gonna be awesome. But two of these, I'm not sure which ones are gonna go to Green Jello. They're gonna take them on tour because this is where I got the idea from. Is Green Jello wears these things and they make them mosh, and I don't know, it's pretty awesome. So you guys get the sneak peek. I did a Hatchet Man one. I don't know which one I'm gonna bring yet though. Which two? These two got to stay together, obviously. So wherever they go, I don't know. I still have to figure it out. But again, the nutsack one is probably like my most favorite so far. You can see this is his body. His head's gonna go here, and his arm. Anyway, so in your sobriety, pick up dumb crafts that keep your mind busy because it's been helpful.
Sober balls does need to go absolutely everywhere. Frank does not get to escape it.
Make him wear it. We're gonna do it. It's gonna be awesome.
I have zip ties.